Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts, and I can't even tell you, I'm so excited to be here with Sally Snowman and Jay Thomson. Sally was the last lightkeeper for Boston Light and until 2023, I believe. Is that right, Sally?
That's correct.
That's right. So for 20 years, she was the lighthouse keeper there, and she has stories to tell. Jay has stories to tell, and one of my very favorite people, Jeremy D'Entremont, is here because he does our talks about lighthouses, and he's the one that told us you have to meet Sally and Jay. And I was like, well, if Jeremy said it, I'm totally doing it. So here we are talking about Boston Light. Sally and Jay are going to be telling us all about their time as Sally's time as the lightkeeper, and we'll have a whole conversation. But before we start, I wanted to say thanks to the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting all of our programs. We couldn't do it without them. I'd like to thank Sally, Jay, and Jeremy for letting us share this program with other libraries, because I think you all know this is when libraries work together, we make magic. So I like thank you very much for all the hands. I love it.
Yeah.
So Sally and Jay are going to be showing some slides for about 45 minutes to an hour, just going through a lot of things that they went through in 20 years, maybe a bit more. They'll pull in conversation with Jeremy, and I will be turning the chat off during their talk, their slides, so that you're not distracted. But I'll turn it back on at the end. But if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A at any time that you think of them, and I will moderate those at the end of their talk. We are going until about 8:30, so we have plenty of time for both the slides and questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy to introduce Sally and Jay. As I said, Jeremy's done, I think we were just talking about the 6 or maybe 8 sessions with us on the various lighthouses around New England, and sometimes ghost lighthouses. That was how we started. And he's just a fount of information, and I just love having him here. So I'm so glad you're here, Jeremy. Thank you so much for spending your time with us for this special occasion with Sally and Jay.
Oh, you're so welcome, Mina. Thanks for having me back again, and thanks for having me back all those times. It's something I look forward to, and I hope I might be running out of topics, but maybe we're getting to the point where we can kind of cycle back at this point. It's been years, but
Yep.
I can probably come up with part 4 of haunted lighthouses if you give me a little time.
You heard it here
We'll see.
first, everybody.
But anyway, it's a real pleasure to be here and an honor to introduce Sally and Jay. We were just talking a few minutes ago. I was trying to think of exactly when it was that I first met Sally, and I think it was late 1980s when I was involved with Friends of the Boston Harbor Islands. I lived in Winthrop, Mass. At the time and got involved with giving tours for the Friends of the Boston Harbor Islands at Boston Light. And I have a picture somewhere in my photo collection of Sally with a group of other Coast Guard auxiliaries on the dock waving to the boat as we're leaving. So that's let's see. Let's see. That's quite a few years before you became a keeper, Sally. More than 10 years before you became a keeper. So I knew you. I knew you back when, and I was very pleased when you got that position as the keeper, and ended up, of course, being the last official lighthouse keeper in the United States. And Sally and Jay. Well, Jay, we were just talking about this too. Jay was doing other things, a full-time job. But also during Sally's stint at Boston Light, Jay spent some shifts out there as well as a watch stander, and certainly spent a lot of time out there as well. So Sally and Jay co-wrote 2 books, including Boston Light, A Historical Perspective, that is the source for Boston Light, just a phenomenal book, and also a Images of America book on Boston Light. And also a children's book, Sammy the Lighthouse Dog. We might be hearing a little bit about that tonight, too. And I think that's probably enough because I'm looking forward to hearing Sally and Jay. So I'll let them take it away.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for being here. All those that are virtually going to be looking at our slides here. And the first one that we're looking at is Little Brewster Island, the place of the first lighthouse in colonial America in 1716. And we have history of the island, and of course, it's been so old, there'll be snapshots of that, and then also sharing our stories about our time being out of the island. So moving right along. This is an aerial of the island, and it has these are the buildings that are on the island at this time. And as you can see, it's pretty small. It's 1.5 acres at high tide and about 3 acres at low tide. And the lighthouse station was established in 1716. And not only was it a lighthouse station, but it was also a fog signal station, of which it's still today. Many people don't even know about fog signals at lighthouses if they're not on a coastal area or had any experiences with lighthouses. And moving back. And we have a map here of 4 colors. The gray is land, the white is water, the green is islands, and the red dot is the way that when the King of England sent ships across the Atlantic Ocean to get trees for the Navy for England, because the trees had all been taken down. And so that red dot, if you take a look at that, there's this little wiggle line between 3 islands, and then up to the upper right, you'll see more islands. And there was a lot of shipwrecks that happened that we'll be talking about briefly, weaving the story here. The green is part of the Boston Harbor Islands National and State Park. These are the islands that are comprised. There's 13 of them. Little Brewster Island is one. If you go to the far right of the screen, it's just a little dot. And so why did they need a lighthouse to traverse safely into Boston Harbor? Because of all those other rocks, islands to the upper right. As they sailed 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean, they needed to take a hard right rudder to traverse through what they called the Narrows, those 3 other islands that are. So they had to come around the ones on the upper right. In Boston Light, when they were talking about in colonial America, we need a lighthouse, where's the best place to do it? There were 2 options that they looked at. One was in the gray. The Jay's putting an arrow on it. I don't know if you can see that. It looks like an elbow. They were considering putting a lighthouse there. And they decided to put it on Little Brewster Island is because as they came across the ocean and they had to take that hard right rudder into the inner harbor, if they overshot the islands in the upper right, they could land in Hull. And in that part of the town of Hull is there's some rocky part there, but there's also some sandy parts. And if they went too soon for that turn, they'd end up on the islands and the rocks that we see in the upper right. And so that's why they put it on Little Brewster Island. And there's so many ships that have destroyed in those rocks in the upper right that even to today, divers like to go down there to see if they can find any of the treasures. And as the red dot goes in and it goes into the harbor, that's where their destination is. And even for this day, that when we have tours out in Boston Light, not to the island, but to views of it, that's the track that they take. And you hear about the other islands, lighthouses that are in the island. There's three more. Next. And okay, so what was it back like in 1716? There were no photographs. However, there were artists. So the one in the upper left, that is a rendition of Boston Light in the background. And you see the tall tree. And then in the bottom right, you see another rendition of 1733, 34. Now, this is an island that's all rocky. There's no way that those tall trees would be able to survive on the island because it's rocky. So that was a rendition.
The artist got a little carried away with trees.
However, on the upper right, on the lower right one, where you see the tower standing, that is where it is today. And that would be out to sea, and the one on the left, that would be toward Boston. And we mentioned at the very beginning, not only Boston Light being a light station, but also a fog signal station. And because there was so much foul weather that happens around the waters of Boston Harbor, a lot of times the light in the tower couldn't be seen, whether it's for fog or snow or any other inclination there. And this is the this
Cannon?
Yeah, the cannon is still around. We took it off the island in 2018, and the Coast Guard is building a
Museum.
Yeah, a $5 million museum down in Connecticut, and the cannon has been taken off the island, being refurbished, and when that museum opens up, that's where the cannon's going to be. And so that was used when it was inclement weather, when you couldn't see the lighthouse flashing. And then there was always a question. We had the Revolutionary War, and we know that the British, they were the ones that had originally built the tower, and they said, hey, if that's our tower, we're not going to let the revolutionists do it. And they blew it up on the way out of Dodge. And after the Revolutionary, or when it was very closely coming to the end, they needed to rebuild the tower. And it was rebuilt in a lot sooner or easier than when it was first built. So Jay and I in our history is saying, how did that happen? So they must have not totally destroyed the island. I mean,
The tower.
the tower. So this picture that you're looking at here, and I'm going to let Jay talk about that.
Okay, they did a refurbishing. They asked Sally what she wanted for the 300th anniversary, and she said spruce the place up. So one of the things they did is they regrouted the tower. And when they did that, they took the white finished stucco or thorough seal finish off. And when they did, it was quite obvious the difference in the bottom section of the tower where the stones were much more erratic and rough, and the outer stones were faced off when they rebuilt it in 1783. So this is the confirmation that the first 6 to 10 feet of the tower is the original tower. But we still give Sandy Hook, New Jersey, because they were up in, was it 1764 or something like that when that was built. But I just say they had too many Tories. They got to keep their tower.
And this is a 1830 drawing, and it's a good, accurate drawing of this. And one of the things that we mentioned is that the King of England wanted to have the trees from New England because they had cut them all down at Great Britain. And so the second item that was exported from Boston was
Cod.
cod. And if you look down at the bottom left, there is a person fishing at the bottom one. And then if you look at where the tower is, go down to the bottom of the tower, a little bit to the left, you'll see 2 little points sticking up and then something sticking out toward the ocean. That is where the fog signal device was. And then on to the right in the back, that would have been the keeper's house. So that was a pretty accurate drawing.
It's one of our favorite sketches.
And then what happened with the fog signal device with the cannon, that was something that needed to be fired off regularly. Initially, it might have been every hour. And then when ships were being built to be faster, they needed to have more frequent use of the cannon. And the cannon, what it was, is it was a blown out one, which means that if it was used for military purposes, it could explode and kill the
Gun crew.
the crew. And so they left the cannon on the island, and it was replaced with a bell, as is in the picture. That was in 1858-59. And then in the same time, on the right, we have, the dates are, I said it wrong.
Yeah.
So
The fogbill was used until 1851.
And then the lantern room, they had to raise the tower for able to put in the lens that is still in the lighthouse at the top of the tower today. And it was brought out in 1858-59, installed it. And so even right now, out in Boston Harbor, the lens is flashing every 10 seconds, beaming out 2 million candle power. And so it's amazing that the Coast Guard is able to continue to utilize the lens because
We've got 18th century technology bumping into the 21st century. So it's a real challenge at the time. And that people that worked on these antique lenses are few and far between.
And these are some photos of what the island was in the late 1800s. The one on the left is there at the time, they were two keepers with their wives and their kids. The one that was closest to the fog signal was on the right-hand side, and the principal keeper was on the left, just to avoid as little of
rank has privileges.
And that same building was refurbished in 1895. They raised the roof and enhanced that. Now, if you look at the picture of the lighthouse, you'll notice that it has two decks to it. When they brought the lens across the Atlantic Ocean and to install it at Boston Light, it didn't fit. They had to raise the top of the tower to house the new lens. And so they raised the tower, the roof on the keeper's house at that time.
So it was actually the fog signal and Fresnel lens technology that bumped it up to having assistant keepers. Prior to that time, they palmed it off on the keeper and his family.
And this one, Jeremy, have you done a presentation for the library on?
Yes, on the Flying Santa.
Yeah, on Flying Santa, yes.
In fact, not too long ago. Yes. Yeah. In fact, these are two pictures that I've never seen before, so these are really interesting to me. I have a number of pictures of the Santa plane passing Boston Light, but not this one. That's really neat.
And there's, if you know where to look, where the wing is of the plane, and then go aft, it's a white bundle. And then we had one of the keepers coming out and collecting it from wherever it landed.
And one of the things I love about this is there's your duplex outhouse for the duplex house.
Right.
We got into plumbing in the 60s.
Could I say a little something about, for people who might have missed my talk or might not know about the Flying Santa? You have Edward Rowe Snow's name on the screen. He was the Flying Santa to lighthouses for over 40 years. It was started by a pilot in Maine in 1929. Edward Rowe Snow also was a very popular author of many books about maritime stories, especially New England. I'm sure probably some of our people in the audience remember him, but and now it's still carried on by Friends of Flying Santa by helicopter to Coast Guard stations. So I just had to get that in a quick synopsis there.
What part of that story is that Flying Santa still exists today. And when I was the keeper out there, we do it by helicopter now, and Flying Santa comes in and gives us our gift. It's such a New England tradition, very wonderful program for Coast Guard children now.
If you don't know about it, you'll really want to know.
Yeah, flyingsanta.org. You can read the whole history there.
Yeah. And here's newer photos of the dated 1947. And you'll notice where on the left that there is a
Sheet pile pier. There's been a north and a south pier on the west end of the island, at least to the middle of the 19th century. We've had reference to it. It gave a protected area because even on the lee side of the island, it could be pretty rough at times.
And that's the picture on the bottom right, that there's it's a safe way to be able to get the boat into the boathouse. This was a guest that was out at Boston Line, and we think that it was
It could have been Edward Rose Snow.
I think he used to go out there and visit quite a bit. And if you see, there's a railway that goes into the boathouse, and it looks like the lighthouse is a part of that. It's just an optical illusion. The other way on the left side would be the principal keeper was permitted to have his boat out there. And the other one to look at is on the upper left. You'll notice there's another house. We have the duplex house, and the more technology that came out onto the island, the more help they needed. So they had the house, that principal house, constructed back in
1884 or 5, and that's the one that remains there today.
And that's the one that we were staying in when I was the keeper. Oh, so the U.S. Coast Guard in 1960 created the Lighthouse Modernization Program, resulting in removing children and wives from islands on peninsulas. And this was a huge game changer. And Boston Light became what we call a stag, or an all-male crew. And from there, the uniforms also changed. And the modernization for lighthouses, even to this day, they're constantly upgrading, updating the lighthouses. All right, so how did Jay and I get together? I joined the Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Which is the volunteer branch of the Coast Guard.
And we met at one of the conferences, and then we started taking turns doing patrols on each other's boats and what have you. And I had said to Jay on one of our patrols, "Oh, I've always wanted to get married at Boston Light." And
Let me know when.
And that was in August of 1993. A year later, just at the same time, just cruising around the harbor, cruising by Boston Light, I said to Jay, "Is the offer still open?"
Yes, it is.
And that was it. That's the proposal. And that was in August. And so we, asked the Coast Guard if we could get married out there. And they said yes.
Yeah, sure. Just have $1 million insurance policy for 24 hours.
And we, our minister, we called him up and said, do you like boats? Do you like boat rides? And he said, not particularly. And when we told him what we were going to be doing, he came out. And so this is where we were married in October. And we started volunteering out there as assistant keepers within 3 or 4 weeks after we got married.
And our limo was a sloop that already had the name True Love.
Yeah, the boat we were on was True Love, a sailboat. We sailed up there. And this is another picture of what Little Brewster Island looks like, with the keeper's house and the tower on the bottom right. That is the cistern building. You wouldn't want to drink the water out of there. That was basically there for the fog signal device. And the other thing that you'll notice, if you look toward the top of the screen, you'll see like some metal things sticking up. Um, the Park Service, when they began giving tours out of Boston Light, there wasn't a good landing to bring guests out to the island. And it took a number of years, but the Park Service was able to get some funding to do a seasonal system out there. And so during the winter time, you just see those spars sticking out. And then during the summertime, there was a dock that they would tie up to that. And the question that people always ask is, okay, so Sally, you were the keeper of Boston Light. Yes, I got hired in 2003, and I was hired as a temp for approximately a year and a half to 2 years. So at the time, I was a college professor at Curry College in Milton, Massachusetts, and I asked if I could have a leave of absence for, and they said, okay, you can have one for up to 4 years. And I said, oh, okie dokie. And it turned out that what was happening was that the Park Service was going to be taking the responsibility of Little Brewster Island. The Coast Guard would still maintain the fog signal and the light at the top of the tower, but it would be the Park Service that would be maintaining the island and so forth. At the last minute, it fell through. And to this day, Captain May and myself, we have no idea why that happened. I ended up on the payroll for 20 years. So how did I get out to the island? The boat that's in the bottom right, that's one that Jay and I bought specifically for as a volunteer, as a way to get Coast Guard Auxiliary volunteers to help with tours with the Park Service.
Park Service calls them interpreters, although they're interpreting history. Although with some of the guests we had, it would be helpful for foreign language.
The other piece of that is, that was before I went on the payroll in 2003. I was appointed as an auxiliarist by Sector Boston, Coast Guard Sector Boston, to be the liaison between Boston Light, the Park Service, and
the active duty on
the
island.
active duty. And so I said to Jay, could we buy a boat just for 2 years so that we can get this program off the ground and what have you? And so I didn't know that in 2000 that there was even a possibility on the radar to become a keeper at that time. It wasn't until 9/11 that the Coast Guard had to readjust what their priorities were. And they went down to Washington, D.C. and asked if there was a way that Boston Light could get transferred to another entity, because Boston Light was the first established lighthouse, and there had been other issues earlier about the Coast Guard wanting to divest it, and it was a big brouhaha. And so it just stayed with the Coast Guard. But after 9/11, things changed dramatically. And so what's happening is the Park Service still wants to have the island. However, no transfer has occurred even now. So when I retired in 2023, that was hoping that the Park Service would be taking that over. And my heart is just, I'm heartsome because the island is no longer manned, and the Coast Guard does its best to make sure that the island is safe, while their primary job is the light at the top of the tower and the fog signal. So the way you get to the island, this is the face of the.
This is why the Park Service spent all that money to try to make the island more accessible for how many weeks?
16.
16 weeks.
And so here we are in our little boat. And one of the things I love flower gardens, and we were bringing them out. And this was in early spring. And then the lighthouse. Let's see what we do there. This is the entrance of it. And as you go into it, that's the little museum piece. And once, when I found that I was going to be retiring and leaving the island, that we didn't want to leave the artifacts there because of concerns of vandalism. It wouldn't be very hard to get into that room. So all of those things that we're looking at in the cupboard there are at Base Boston. The Coast Guard has a place for them. Oh, and on the right, there's the cannon that was out on the lawn earlier. It was in the museum room. And then when we knew that the island was not going to be manned or womaned anymore, that's when we moved forward to have the cannon removed from the island. And there's 76 spiral stairs, and then up to a landing. Then we go up into the gear room. So on the left is the ladder that goes up into the lantern room. And then on the right are the gearworks. That are the same gearworks that was there when the lens that was brought over in 1858 and 59. The only thing that's different is the wheels that are turning. You see the smaller wheels? There's 8 of them, and they get worn down. But the other part of all of that is still the original. Isn't that amazing? And then here we are up in the lantern room. I love this slide, the one on the left. Doesn't it look like it's watching over the harbor, like it's safe? And the one on the right is showing there's 12 panels and we can see 3 of them. And the bullseye is what magnifies a
1,000-watt halogen lamp to 2 million candle power. It's rated for 27 miles, but you can see it a lot further if you're up in the air.
And this is a great picture, the one on the left. You're in the gear room and you're looking up into the lens. There's 336 individual prisms, and they're all the originals. And then the one on the right is just showing you the ladder that brings you up into a lantern.
We did have a little brass that you could polish, as you can see on the right.
I loved cleaning the lens and I loved cleaning the brass. So the National Park Service and Boston Harbor now sponsored tours to Boston Light from 2000 to 2017. And there was a pilot season in 1999, and I was in the beginning front end of that, and I was out on just about every tour. And how did they get to the island? The boat on the left was the first one that the Park Service leased from UMass Boston. And the name of the vessel is the Hurricane. And one of the things we discovered in that first year in 1999 is when the boat was needed to depart and you needed to board, we would say to the visitors, "Oh, we gotta go. The hurricane's here." And people were saying, "There's a hurricane coming." So we had to change the language on that one. And while the UMass Boston was contracting to have another vessel, the one on the right. So the reason why UMass Boston wants the boat, because they do maritime research. And so the boat on the right, the Columbia Point, that is the one that was giving the tours when we had the tours. And now what the Park Service does is they offer lighthouse tours through Boston Harbor, and that's the boat that they use.
The interesting tidbit about the hurricane is the name came from Hurricane Island up in Maine, where Outward Bound was did it. So that's why the weird name.
And so in the beginning of the Park Service tours, this is a barge of sorts that was loaned by the Massport. So that was through the Coast Guard, and that bought the Park Service time to come up with a design for landing for the to the island. And so the cost of the
piling
set and what have you for the Park Service was $1.8 million. And look at the barge that was on the left from Massport versus the dock that was put in. It's very, very narrow and with the gangway. So for a safety factor, we could only have 6 people coming off the boat at a time, and just making sure there's no handrails on the dock. So that was a big safety factor that I worried about a lot as the keeper. All right, so the Park Service started giving tours, and what do they needed? They need volunteers. So we have a ranger, and volunteers came not only from the Coast Guard Auxiliary, but also from the Friends of Boston Harbor Islands. So the ranger is in the forefront, and I was in the back. And then, okay, 9/11 came. The Coast Guard went down to Washington, D.C. and getting permission to permit a civilian keeper for Boston Light to release the 3
active
duty. And so this was the day, Jay calls it the Pavarotti Day, where we had all sorts of dignitaries and what have you, where I was in my first costume as the keeper. And a lighthouse story isn't complete without a lighthouse dog. And Sammy is the last official Coast Guard
lighthouse
dog, yes. And he died in 2004. And Sammy and I and Jay,
he was a typical lab, just lovable.
And as he was aging, him to get on and off the island during the winter time, because when there were storms and the active duty were on the island, Sammy almost had a couple of accidents being transferred from the end of the dock onto the Coast Guard boat. So he actually stayed with us for 3 winters, which was a big joy.
And we were living in downtown Plymouth, and he was used to being on the island, and he got away once. It was scary.
And so for Sammy, what we have done for him is we have a gravestone with his name on there. So that's his claim to fame. So when we were having tours out there 16 weeks out of the summer, and we had 2 tours from the Park Service, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, there would be also opportunities for what we call drive-bys. People in boats, they could come and tour between the morning and the afternoon. So some would have boats that they could be on the beach, like the one we're showing here. Those that were sailboats or power boats, they were able to come to the dock, drop off their passengers, go away, come back and pick them up. And sometimes they'd have up to like 40, 50 people just coming in a to our window.
And you can see it was a stony beach.
And then the question is, like, how do you get things out to the island? And this particular photo is a great one because the house was very cold. It was very, very drafty. So the Coast Guard got funding to replace the windows. So this is a picture of the Coast Guard helo with a box underneath it on a chain. And that was bringing the windows to the island. And then when the project was finished, they came back and went. And it was so exciting because I got to fly in a helicopter with the doors opened. That was so exciting.
And of course, the justification for this is it was training for the active duty in the helicopters.
And then, what do you do out there? Well, it's an island and it has everything, the housing and what have you, but getting things there. If you forgot to bring your groceries with you, or you had a headache and you wanted an aspirin and you didn't bring it with you, well, you're not going to have it there. Other than that, we did what you do at home, mow the lawn and what have you. And Jay loves the picture, the bottom right. One of the things when I took over the job, there was different federal changes and
Requirements.
Yeah,
The DEP kept upping the requirements, and Little Brewster Island has its own separate sewage treatment. We're not tied into the Deer Island treatment, which does most of metropolitan Boston sewage. Little Brewster Island had its own sewage treatment plant. And one of the things Sally got to do was take the scum out and deliver that to the inspectors that came out once a month for 3 months.
So what I would do is once a week, I needed to remove the poop and put it in a bucket. And then when they came out and did their shtick, they would take the full buckets and give me some empty buckets. So
the last piece of treatment that the effluent had before it was released is it went through a bath with chlorine in it. So you wouldn't want to drink it, but
yeah, no, and I wouldn't let any of the volunteer auxiliaries do that. I mean, that was just too disgusting. I wouldn't. And the other thing is, we couldn't drink the water on the island because the water came down the roof into the cisterns, and then the birds would do their poop, not healthy. So we would bring the water out, and the way we did it, we have Simpson Spring in Easton, and we would take our SUV, drive there, pick up bottles of water, bring it to the marina, put it on the boat, bring it out to the island, and then bring it down into the cellar of the keeper's house. And we always did that at a high tide. And when auxiliaries were signing up for duty out at the island, they'd always ask, oh, is there going to be a water transfer? No, I'm not available that week.
And we brought it out at a high tide because average tide swing in the Boston area is 9.5 feet on average.
And then we had our 300th anniversary. How fun is that? And so Jeremy is with the U.S. Lighthouse Society, that's just part of our presentation tonight. And this was a huge, big event. The U.S. Lighthouse Society in Land's End, the clothing store people, worked together, and they asked the Coast Guard, gee, we would like to offer what do you need on the island? What is the most challenging piece you have? And the stairs, the 76 spiral stairs, they had been there
since 1844.
And so they were rusting and what have you, and there were 13 that were particularly cautious. We were concerned about that.
The worst of the worst.
So the Land's End came up with $30,000 to the Coast Guard so that they could replace those. And it was a big event. And look at the ship that, it was 110 in length.
Foot long.
And they actually, if you look in the back of the picture on the right-hand side, you'll see the ship that was tied up to that 50-foot dock. And the CEO of Land's End, I was with her on the boat. And then we have the steps, some of the replacement ones. And if you notice, there's the Ranger coming up, and then we have the entourage of the US Lighthouse Society and Land's End. That was quite a huge event.
One of the big problems was, how do you donate money to the Coast Guard? So the U.S. Lighthouse Service stepped in as an intermediary.
All right, so what happened, in which came to an ending of my service out of Boston Light. So this is the calm before the storm. And one day the Coast Guard in the wintertime was taking me out with an auxiliarist. And we knew that it was going to be rough out there, but we didn't know how much. There was no way that the boat could even safely get even close to the end of the pier.
And this is the lee side of the island.
And you can see the waves on the right-hand side pounding onto the island. All right, so this is what was happening out there. And the story that goes with this one is, in the wintertime, the Coast Guard allowed me and others, assistant keepers, to come out for a watch. If we watched the weather carefully so that we would not be stranded out on the island at any given time. And during this particular time in February, we looked at the weather. It looked like it was going to be good. And so myself and another auxiliarist, Audrey, we went out there, and a storm was brewing, and it was going to be a quick one. It was just going to be a nor'easter, nothing, no problem. Well, it turned out at the last minute, it turned into a blizzard. And we got, I don't want to say stranded out there, but it was not safe to get off the island. And silly me took pictures. And then when I got off the island and sent them to the Coast Guard, they said, "What were you doing out there?" And that's when we ended not doing.
End of winter watches.
Yeah, that was in 2013. And then what happened with our public access? In March 2018, we had damage. And, this is what it looked like. So we were able to do the watch standing for the island out there, but there were obviously no tours. And I had a premonition that this was going to be my last summer out at Boston Light. Really didn't, no reason to consider that, but it turned out that in 2019, we had an inspection on the island, like big, huge. And there were so many violations that I was told that the place was not habitable. We could not man the island anymore. So that news came in the winter of 2019.
Regulations just keep getting stiffer.
Yeah. And I mean, it looked like a Cookie Monster just took a chunk out of that was a hill, not a hill anymore. And so the name of this presentation is The First and the Last, when we go physically to libraries. And unbeknownst to us, on one of the
Park Service tours.
This family in the upper left showed up. And I was talking to them and yada, yada, yada. And I did not realize that they are the
Descendants of the very first keeper out at Boston Light.
and that was
George Worthy Lake.
George Worthy Lake. And so this is the George Worthy Lake. And I didn't know that until we were walking them down to the dock to get on the boat. I didn't have a pen. I didn't have anything to get their information with. Well, here I was talking with them, and they didn't even tell me that this was a family trip out to the island on a tour from the Park Service. And so Worthy Lake was the first keeper of Boston Light back in 1716, and I am the last of 2023. And out of the 70 keepers of Boston Light over all these years, I've been the only female. So I'm the first and the last, the first woman and the last keeper. And this was taken at a sunrise when it was a winter time. And so we have to do it at a high tide. And I took that as I was coming off the island. And one of the things that I love to do is strike the colors at night. And if you notice that I have a costume on, and the reason why is because as a Coast Guard auxiliarist and having been volunteering out there for not pay, and sometimes with Jay and sometimes with the active duty. And what was happening was that
When she became the civilian keeper, she couldn't wear the auxiliary uniform, so that's the reason she wears what she's wearing now.
And the reason why I have the dress on is because I'm an introvert by nature, and I didn't want to be recognized by anyone when I'm off island, and it really works. I'm incognito.
And this is one I like to show. Of all the 70 keepers out there, where does Sally rank in longevity? And she's right up there.
Yeah, so I'm the 70th and the last keeper.
And she's a distant relative of Captain Thomas Bates and Captain David Tower.
And Jay took this picture. You can describe that, Jay.
This is a picture taken in the rain from the steps at the light, and it's a time exposure to stop the light on its 10-second rotation. And so there's 12 beams that rotate out there.
And you can see almost all 12 of them. In the book that we wrote, Boston Light, A Hysterical Perspective, in 1999, that's the cover of the book. And with that, we're finished with the PowerPoint presentation.
Fantastic. I know, Jeremy, you had something that you wanted to talk with Sally and Jay about. So I will hold off on questions just for a few more minutes.
Sure. I'm wondering, I promise it'll only take a minute. Am I able to share my screen to show a couple of pictures? Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So let me see here. Share. Okay. Okay. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet.
You
There it is.
Okay. All right. So I'll just leave it like this. This is the gravestone of that first keeper, George Worthy Lake, who Sally talked about, keeper in 1716. In November 1719, Worthy Lake died in a terrible boat accident. He and his wife and one of their daughters and a family servant and a family friend and also a slave named Shadwell, they were in a canoe. A landing party had come back from Boston. Shadwell paddled the canoe out to meet the landing party, and the canoe capsized and all six of them drowned. So that was in November 1719. They are buried, Worthy Lake and his wife and daughter are buried in the Cops Hill Burying Ground in Boston's North End. That's where this is. And to make a long story short, John Lopez, who's in the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and is actually, I know he's in the audience right now. He and I have worked together on a few ceremonies where we've had Lighthouse Service bronze markers placed on the graves of lighthouse keepers. And we're going to do that for George Worthy Lake. Amazingly, nobody's done it yet for the first lighthouse keeper in the United States. But we're planning to have a ceremony there in May. We don't have a date set yet, but watch for information about that. I'll be announcing it on the U.S. Lighthouse Society website, which is uslhs.org, and we'll try to get it on the news as much as we can. But I'm certainly hoping Sally and Jay will be there. I'd love to have Sally say a few words, but we think it's going to be a really nice event sometime in May. So I wanted to tell everybody about that. I also wanted to mention real quickly that I had the pleasure of staying overnight at Boston Light only once, nothing like Sally and Jay, but Sally was nice enough to invite me to spend the night on the couch in the keeper's house. And I had the most beautiful sunrise and sunset and sunrise in that order. This is the sunset that evening when I was there. And then late at night, I went out and took some pictures, like not as good as what Jay got with those beams of light, but it's just so beautiful. And this was sunrise, then another sunrise picture, and a little bit later. So that was quite an amazing experience. So can you believe that was 10 years ago, Sally? What's that?
That's a great shot.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember that very dramatic line of clouds. So it's hard to believe that was 10 years ago, Sally. It was 2016. So thank you again for that. So let me get out of screen sharing here. Okay.
Back to Worthy Lake. Jay and I were working with the Coast Guard to get one of the what do you call it?
Yeah, one of the markers. And I think if you check with Cobb's Hill, you may not be able to have anything sticking up. That was what we were told. You might be able to take care of that. You can still have the ceremony, but having the permanent marker there, you'll have to do some politicking.
And again, that was 20 years ago. So
right, I was going to say, yeah, I know John's working on that, but we'll see. Like you said, if we're not able to actually put the bronze marker there, we'll have a ceremony anyway. So, yeah, but thank you for mentioning that.
Well, we're having Jeremy back to talk about something about lighthouses on April 13th. So I hope that you have a date by then, and then we'll share it with everybody.
Well, that's both of us. That'll be the three of us. We're going to talk about women keepers. No, I'm sorry. I'm mixing it up with another event. I'm sorry. That's somebody else. That's South Old New York. Sally knows what I'm talking about. Sorry. It gets, things get a little scrambled in this old brain of mine.
Doing too many presentations, Jeremy.
Anyway, so forget everything I just said.
Forgot. Okay, I just want to remind everybody, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, which is a button at the bottom of your chat Zoom screen. Sometimes the chat just goes by way too fast for me to pay attention to or catch everything. But I do want to say, Sally and Jay, you have a bunch of people in the audience that are family members, cousins, sisters, nieces. I mean, they came out in force. I'm so impressed. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the first question that came up when you were talking. When the fog signal cannon was used, do you know how often it was fired during a single storm?
The original request from Keeper Hayes was a cannon, great gun, to answer ships in the fog. And then as time went on, it got to be, like fired off once an hour or a half hour. And of course, Sally always came with the question.
Well, there was the keeper, the wife, and a gaggle of kids. And I always wondered when they were using the gun, the cannon, during the day or the night, how old were the kids that were going to be trained onto how to light that off? Mm-hmm. I can imagine 8 and 9-year-olds probably doing that, especially as the ships got faster. So yeah, they fired off once an hour, and then maybe every half hour, and then maybe 20 minutes. And maybe that's why they had to go to the bell.
Mhm.
because you can't do that with just a gaggle of kids and a keeper.
Well, actually, the next question from Teresa is, why did Boston Light remove families? I know you had said something about technology or something at one point. There was a slide about it.
Yeah, well, the thing of it was, is you could see from Sally being out there and what was supposed to be a nor'easter and turned into a gale with all of these offshore lighthouses. You can read of the experiences that the keeper and their families had out there. So it was what we're always facing now. It was safety issues.
Yeah.
In fact, that brings up my next question from Janine. Were you ever in fear of your safety? Do you believe that it could still be womaned safely now?
No, but, my thought was, what a way to go. No, I have no fear out there.
One of the interesting stories was typical of any big storm. The assistant keepers were out there in the blizzard of 78, which was one of our Boston area biggies. And they said that the water in the low point of the island get to be up to about 3 feet. But the house has been there since 1885. So, um,
Yeah, but I mean, it just seems like it's on this, it's an island on this made, all the water and salt water and damage and things like that. How is that possible to keep it, in use for 300 years?
Well, the interesting thing during that storm with Audrey, the waves were coming in and bashing the back of the house, and the house was vibrating. I was on the bed and I could feel it. I felt like I was in one of those no-tell motels with the vibrating.
Put a quarter in. Yeah.
But once again, there was no fear. And thinking about it, I don't think I even asked Audrey if she was scared or not. She never. We'd be running window to window with our cameras, taking pictures. And oh, you got to come over here! Look at this one coming. There were 20-foot seas out there.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
that was my most exciting event out there. Oh,
amazing.
other than the day of Mahabharata Day when all the dignitaries came out in 2003, and of course our 300th anniversary. That was way over the top. That was
Mhm.
amazing. The Commandant came out, and Jeremy, were you on the island for that? You
No, I forget why. I certainly wanted to be. I forget exactly the circumstances, but I wasn't able to be there.
we
Mm.
I
wouldn't
was there
make
in
sure that they got
1989.
you.
Sorry. I was going to say I was there in October 89, the day that Ted Kennedy announced the funding to keep the place staffed. Um, I was the only person videoing that. So if people want to see the video of that press conference, well, it wasn't really a press conference, that announcement, my website is newenglandlighthouses.net. I'll just
Mhm.
mention that if people want to see some more pictures and videos and things.
Mary asks, where in Connecticut was that museum you mentioned where the fog cannon is now or will go?
it's going to be in Connecticut, just across from the Academy.
New London.
New London, yes.
Yeah, and I'll just mention it's kind of gone full circle because that cannon for many years, as I'm sure you guys know, was on the grounds of the Coast Guard Academy. And
Yes,
then
and
it was
that was
brought
from
back
the
to Boston Light, and I was there in 1991. Were you there that day, Sally, when there was like a dedication for the cannon in 1991 when they put it
no,
in the little
no,
museum there? Yeah, I was there for that. I wasn't there for the 300th anniversary, but
yeah.
I was there for that. But yeah, so the cannon's now going back to New London. Yeah.
Okay, let me see. So I have a couple of questions about the Worthy Lakes. Where are they from, and where's the burial site?
Burial
Um,
site is in the Cops Hill Burying Ground in the north end of Boston.
Got it. Emily
Um,
also said that
do,
too.
do you know? I don't remember. I know that Worthy Lake had a farm on Lovell's Island in the harbor. He was 43 years old when he got the job. I think he was also a fisherman, but I don't remember what his background was, his family background. Do you know where?
I haven't dug into his background, but
Hmm.
all the early keepers were harbor pilots.
Hmm.
Those were the local knowledge people that would guide the other ships in. And there's a
Yeah.
whole story about that too.
Yeah. Well, he didn't pay him enough either, so he made a little extra money being a harbor pilot too, I believe.
And
Well, the
The
other
colony
sad
didn't pay him
part
much.
about Worthy Lake is he had 54 sheep. And at this time, Little Brewster Island and Great Brewster Island were connected at low tide. And a storm came up, and there were sheep that were on that low piece, and
At low
they
tide.
drowned. And
Yeah.
Worthy Lake asked if he could.
That was the first lighthouse keeper claim, was
Yeah.
his lost sheep. I don't think he did very
No,
well.
he didn't get anything.
That's another attempt at making more money because they paid him so
Yes.
poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sue wants to know. Oh, Sue wants to know, how were you able to stay until 2023 if the inspection in 2019 said you could no longer stay there?
You want to take it or you want me?
I didn't hear it.
The question is, she was still keeper, although she wasn't able to live at the residence. We'd go out there and, as you see, we'd mow the lawn and try to make it look lived in. And she still had all the public appearances and the activities that were involved with her job as the keeper.
So so we used to try to get out there 2 or 3 times a week just to we were really concerned about vandalism. So if we were there enough times, and then the island is only a mile away from the town of Hull. So it's real easy. People come out with the paddle boards and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so for my job, what it was doing, because on the summer I lived out there, it was just doing all the paperwork, all the things that still had to happen.
Still working between the Coast Guard, the National Park Service, and UMass Boston, scheduling tours, etc.
Mm.
Yeah.
You had stuff to do.
So what the Coast Guard did is they asked me, when are you planning on to retire? They wanted to get rid of me. And so I was confident that the transfer to the Park Service was going to happen. So I said, I will stay on for 3 more years to finish out 20 years. And or with whenever
if the Park Service took it over first, should retire at that point.
Yeah. So that was how it got chosen for 2023 to get my 20 years. And the thing is, there is so much history about the island and all the stuff that was coming off the island, bringing it home, sorting it out, bringing it into the Coast Guard base, and getting it into a secure place. And that took 3 years.
That would. Okay. I'm sorry. I think people are having trouble getting to the Q&A, so I'm going to try to pay attention to the chat as well. Sorry about that.
I can help if you need help with it. Either I can look at one if you want.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to do the chat, and I'll keep doing and we can go back and forth. There's a lot of questions there. Sarah asks, I love the Fresnel lens. How many lighthouses have them?
Oh, that's not too many have them in place and working because they're so difficult to work with. Interesting tidbit is our neighbor Graves Light, which is 2 miles away. They had a first order Fresnel lens, which was a little bigger than ours, and that was removed. It had a mercury bath, which was one of the reasons it was removed. But the present owner, Dave Waller, has actually cobbled together a first order Fresnel lens, and it's mounted up in Graves Light, and it's ready to go as soon as he gets the permission on the new light characteristic. Sally actually got a chance to push the button and have it turn.
I call it a Franken lens. I call it. Made out of parts, mostly from Australia, prisms from lenses in Australia. He's amazing. Dave Waller is phenomenal. You should have him. He does a talk. We should talk about that, Mina.
Oh, yeah, I'm on it.
Don't forget.
Okay, is there a question in the chat that you want to?
What's the name of your YouTube channel? But I'm not sure who Elaine is talking to there.
Oh, that was me. I answered that one.
Oh,
Finway
okay.
asks, is technology manning the lighthouse now?
Um, it's automated in that it has a switch that notices when it becomes dusk and turns it on, and when it becomes daylight and turns it off. That technology has been around for a while. When we started going out there and volunteering, we actually had to go up the 76 spiral stairs in the first 9-rung ladder and throw two switches, one for the electric power and the other for the light that sits up on the top. So we have to throw two switches. But that got automated in what,
99,
99?
or 98, somewhere in that part.
And that's the reason that it rotates 24/7 now, is for the mechanism to realize that it's not working. It has to be on all the time. So instead of just operating from sunset to sunrise, it's on 24/7. So those carriage wheels are wearing down faster than they used to.
Mhm.
And so there is a electronic 24 hours a day, so that if it hiccups, the Coast Guard knows immediately.
They're actually backup lights if the Fresnel isn't working that kick in automatically.
Mhm.
So, Sally, I noticed you're wearing this costume, and you talked about it a little bit, but I noticed also like the stairs and the ladders and the things to get up to the lights for maintenance. I hope you got to wear pants for that.
When I was working on the island, yes, I had jeans and a t-shirt on. But whenever there's visitors, and we had visitors all the time, so I could throw on this outfit in a nanosecond. And again, reiterating, just because I don't want to be recognized on the mainland.
And sometimes you'd be going up and down those stairs in a hurry, what, 3, 4, 5 times?
Was that about the maintenance of the light in the lens, or was it something else? Like, how come you had to be up there so much?
There was a particular formula, it's been 3 years. It's
To clean the lens.
distilled water.
While she's thinking of that, the reason why she's going up and down so many times in her outfit would be during tours when there was a hiccup in the management of the tours, because they actually allowed people to go up there in groups right up nose to the Fresnel lens, which the lampists would just shake their head at. It's definitely not a recommended thing to go nose to nose with a Fresnel lens. So if there was an issue, she would be going up to take care of the problems.
Well, the thing is that some froze on the ladder going up into the gear room, and I literally peeling their fingers off the handrails. So yes, I had to move pretty quickly.
I used to be back in that.
So for the cleaning of the lens, there was a special cloth and a combination of a drop of woolite, distilled water,
alcohol. I forget the proportions of distilled water and alcohol, and then the drop of woolite. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. That's it.
Awesome.
It's the official formula. I've used it myself. Yeah.
Oh.
Not on Boston Light, but Portsmouth Harbor Light, I've had to clean the lens. Much smaller lens there, 4th order. There's a couple of questions in the chat we haven't gotten to. I'll answer one of them here. Who were the other? Where were the others on the boat with the first Lighthouse family that drowned, buried? Well, Worthy Lake, his wife and daughter who died are buried in that triple gravestone is. Shadwell, the slave, who we plan to honor with this event in May, we definitely want to, he's certainly never been honored at any public event that I'm aware of. Maybe Sally, maybe you have done something, but we want to honor him. We think he's probably buried in an unmarked grave in Cops Hill burying
Oh,
ground.
I think it
There's
was
a lot of
Rainsford Island, if I,
Rainsford Island.
Oh, really? Now that
Yeah.
you say that, that rings a bell. Thank you for saying that. I'm so glad you said that because we know there are unmarked graves of African Americans at Cops Hill, and there was some discussion. We thought that Shadwell's probably there, but now that you say, I think Edward Rowe Snow wrote that.
yeah, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So, but we can still honor him in that ceremony.
Yeah.
So we don't,
Absolutely.
but we don't know. I don't know where. I think his name was it George Cutler, the family servant who also died in that. I don't know where he's buried, if he's at Cops Hill. And then there was a family friend. I think his name was John Edge. I don't know where they're buried. Or there may not be marked graves anywhere. I don't know.
Yes. Doing genealogy, finding graves sites for that period is pretty sketchy.
Yeah. Somebody asked, was Jay an assistant keeper? Were there other perks besides housing for being a keeper?
It's interesting. When we started volunteering out there, there were the three active duty, and the rotation was 2 on, 1 off. So if you do the math, if they got sick, wanted to take training or take vacation leave, the Coast Guard would have to find bodies to stand because for safety reasons you had to have 2 people. So when we started substituting, we actually called ourselves watchstanders, not to offend the active duty assistant keepers. But we had, how many did we have that were qualified as assistant keepers?
Totally from 2000 to not retirement, there were like 336. Over that.
That was the volunteers, not the assistant keepers.
Oh, okay. Yes, I don't know the number of.
I think it was something like 36. So
Oh, no.
they're
Good. It was higher than.
okay.
Yeah, you're talking about the historic assistant keepers, right?
I still have other records. I have every, I have a record of everyone that was out there as an assistant keeper or tour guide.
So a bunch of people want to know if the lighthouse is haunted. And I think Jeremy too can speak to this because did you see ghosts? Did anybody die out there? Like, tell us.
Jeremy, have you written about Boston Light?
I think I've talked about Boston Light in one of my presentations. For,
But have you had anything in writing?
One thing.
Well,
one thing
a lot of what
want,
sorry, I do have a. Go ahead, Jay.
One thing you may want to remember is what we call King Philip's War. The Native Americans were housed on Deer Island. Well, they were also on Little Brewster Island. So there was a lot going on out there at that time.
Yeah, it's a lot of human history there that goes well before the lighthouse, as you said. Well, I know you have some part of what I talk about if I talk about Boston Light and that, side of things is stuff you've told me, Sally. But also I think you probably know about Maisie Anderson, whose husband was a keeper. I think his name was Russ Anderson. He was a Coast Guard keeper in the early 50s. Do you know their story, her story? I don't know if we've talked about this before.
There was a lot of gaps in the records back then that we didn't get to look at the payroll records because at that time we were just auxiliaries. So there could be some gaps in there that we don't have.
Well, anyway, in the early 50s, she was the daughter of a lighthouse keeper in Maine also, but she wrote an article in Yankee Magazine later about her life at lighthouses. And she said in the early 50s, when they were at Boston Light, or maybe it was late 40s, so somewhere in there. But anyway, she said that multiple times she would hear a girl sobbing outside and there was no girl on the island. And she was sure that's what she heard. And then she heard the girl shouting, "Shadwell, Shadwell." And Maisie didn't know about the drowning of the Worthy Lakes and everything, and didn't know about Shadwell, the slave, until she was doing some research later and saw that the slave was named Shadwell. And she said, "That's what I heard the girl yelling." So that was interesting. She said she had other stories too. She felt there was like an evil male presence in the boathouse or something. I don't know about that, but and Dennis Dever, who was a Coast Guard keeper in the late '80s, who I got to know because I was giving tours at that time,
Yeah, we called
had
Dennis
some stories.
the first of the last keepers.
Right. Yeah, yeah. He liked being, he thought he was the last keeper in the country. He enjoyed that, but not quite. But anyway, yeah, he had some stories. He told me for one thing that one time he was like, I think he was washing the dishes at the sink, and the window over the kitchen sink looks out at the lighthouse, right? Am I remembering that right? Do I have that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he's looking out at the lighthouse and he saw a guy standing in the top. And the only other guy there was, I don't know if you remember, James McClurkin was his assistant at that time. And he's in the other room. And so he goes running over the lighthouse to see who's in there. And as he's running over, he saw somebody up there. And he told me he thought it looked like a man in an old-fashioned lighthouse keeper's uniform. And he ran up the stairs and nobody was there. So those are the stories that I sometimes tell, but also the ones that you were told, Sally. But I'm sorry, I don't mean to take words from you here, but I love what you told me, Sally, once, just that you feel you don't think it's haunted exactly from what you told me, but that it's spirited, or that there's, is that a good way of putting it? That
Yes,
there's spirits
spirited.
in a
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we'll definitely have Jeremy back for some haunted lighthouses for sure. Tommy wants to know, can you still activate the foghorn with your UHF radio? 3 clicks, I think.
Affirmative.
VHF radio.
Yes.
Yeah.
What? So like
Yeah.
if I was just like driving by on my boat, I could just click, 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 and the light
Get
would.
I got to be on the right channel, and it's usually 5 times, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, 5 or more
But
times. And
yeah.
Dave Waller would appreciate it if you don't do that when he's out there.
Not the one at Graves, yeah.
Because he's not anywhere near as far away from the fog signal as we are at Boston Light. It's right on in his house, basically.
Right.
I
Yeah,
have to
that's
say, I
the
feel
MRAS, Mariner Activated System. That's anywhere where there's a foghorn in this country. That's how they work now. Yeah.
I'm just gonna go around. You know, like how you used to do with if you couldn't find your car, you like beep 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 beep. I'm just gonna do that.
Yeah.
So Rachel, I feel so bad for her. She said she was scheduled to be on your last tour in 2023, but it was canceled due to the high seas. So sad. So that's not going to happen anymore, right? There's no more tours, no.
Correct.
Well, what they've done as an alternate is they take a tour around the harbor and they look at the lighthouses, and it's narrated by the Park Service. It's pretty. We volunteer to do it once in a while, and it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes up by Graves Light as well, and Long Island Head. Although
Dave is there, Dave makes it a point to wave, and you can see why he doesn't have too many visitors. His front door is like 20 feet above the water level.
I got on there a couple of summers ago, and that's one of my most hair-raising lighthouse visits of my life. And I've had a lot. I was with Dan May, our mutual friend, retired Rear Admiral Dan May, and getting off of there, squall came up. It got super windy and choppy, and transferring from a dinghy to the larger boat was really scary. So anyway, Graves is a pretty amazing place. Yeah.
And I know from all those presentations that not much scares Jeremy. So
ghosts don't scare me, but having to jump from a bobbing dinghy onto a bobbing larger boat,
yeah, that
scared me.
Okay, so a couple of questions about the Fresnel lamps. How are they protected from vandalism, and what is the order of the Fresnel?
Okay, I'm going to jump in and say the guy was French, so it's Fresnel is the proper pronunciation. The one out there is a second order Fresnel lens, and the orders of them are the distance from the light source to the lens. So the first order, which is out at Graves Light, is the biggest, and it goes down to like 5th to 6th order. The one that Jeremy has at his lighthouse, being a 4th order, is still a pretty respectable size lens.
And very common. Yeah, very common size. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So is the 5th one the biggest? Or like if
Fifth
Italy,
is the
No, it's the
sixth
other
is
way
the
around.
smallest in
The
this
first
country.
order is the biggest, and
okay,
then they get smaller and smaller and smaller.
interesting.
I just have to tell you, I was in France in June, and I went to the National Maritime Museum in Paris,
Mhm.
and they have panels. Augustin Fresnel, the inventor of the Fresnel lens, invented them in the early 1820s. They have panels made by Fresnel in his early tests in the early 1820s on display in that museum. To see those was pretty cool.
Wow.
Mm.
The first lighthouse in the world to use a Fresnel lens was Cardouin Lighthouse in France, which I got to tour that lighthouse. That lens is now in a museum that I didn't get to see, but anyway, I digress. But
You all have
they're
the
they're
most interesting lives.
they're works of functional art. In addition to being very efficient way to magnify and project the lens. There's beautiful sculptures, really. Yeah.
There's a great article that I forget his first name, Spinola, did
Spinella.
on, yeah, and the Lighthouse Service now has the custody of the DVD. If you're really interested in it, it's a worthwhile view. It's was it I think like 12 to 20 minutes or something, and it's very well done. In fact,
Yeah.
Spinola now is making plastic replica Fresnel lenses.
Yeah, acrylic. Yeah, he's in Florida. Artworks Florida. Dan Spinella.
Yeah.
He's been on my podcast, and you can't tell the difference. They are phenomenal. He's just finishing a installation of a replica first order acrylic lens in Cape Hatteras Lighthouse in North Carolina. I'm not sure if it's totally in there yet, but that's in progress. Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
Deb asked, and we're not going to get to, I don't think we'll get to all of the questions, but we'll get to just like a couple more. Deb wants to know about the print on the back of your, behind you with the lighthouse that looks like a stamp. Is that an actual stamp? Like, I mean, like, is it an actual
That,
stamp? Like little one.
Um, there was in 2013, the U.S. Post Office had northern quadrant of the states for stamps. And so Boston Light was in that. There was one from Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. And so the ceremony was on the Greenway in Boston. It was a pretty big do with media and everything like that. And Boston Light, of those 5 stamps, Boston Light was the #1 premier. And that is a blown up
that was
stamp. And it was gifted to me. So
Wow.
it's always dressed up. And as I said, it was a pretty big event.
Yeah, we had an event at Portsmouth Harbor, the Coast Guard station, just after that, because Portsmouth Harbor was the New Hampshire stamp. There are only 2 lighthouses to choose from in New Hampshire, but I got to sit next to Senator Maggie Hassan at the. Actually, she was Governor Maggie Hassan at that time at the that event. Yeah, that
So
was cool.
in our audience is Joseph, former assistant dive chief of Quincy Underwater Recovery. I think it's fascinating because you had talked about all the people that go diving near the lighthouse because they're still looking for wreckage. And he says he has a Fresnel lens, which was the running light from the original Mount Washington on Lake Winnipesaukee.
Oh yeah.
Hmm,
Huh. Well, that's
fascinating.
like a lantern type. There's still a Fresnel lens. Yeah.
Mhm.
I just wanted, let's see. Now I forgot where it was. There was a question that how many lighthouses in Mass in New England? I'll answer that. By my count, and there's always arguments about what constitutes a lighthouse or, how to count them, but I'm going to say 55 lighthouses in Massachusetts and about 160 standing lighthouses in the New England states. But again, don't quote me on that because you're going to get a lot of different numbers, but I'm going to stick with those numbers. That's my
Jeremy's
strategy.
written a few books on New England lighthouses, sort of a little bit about each one. It's a great have you in your hand if you're looking at lighthouses.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's my home turf for sure.
He's my go-to guy. I just have one last thing to say before we head out because it is 8:30. Is that I love Sally your very Boston accent. And when you said brouhaha, I nearly fell over. It's just so classic. You don't have to say it again, but you definitely like it just hit me like you're just from this area, you know. So I can see you in a lighthouse, you know, doing your thing, you know, telling people what to do and just having a blast. So, anyways, we are at 8:30. I want to say thank you to Sally and Jay so much for spending your time with us, and Jeremy for coming in and on your free time and helping us out with this one. And for everybody who came with these amazing questions and comments and your experiences with lighthouses, I really love it. So I'll send more to you all in a bit, but I just want to say thank you to, like I said, Sally, Jay, and Jeremy for making this such a special night for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great night, everybody. We'll be in touch.
Okay.